Her name, at least the one she shares, is Narina. You trace those letters more than once across the cracked surface of your old phone screen, as though pressing them might summon her closer. She fills her page with fantastical edits, glittering scales that shine like oil on water, a tail fin arched high like a banner, skin pale in ways that seem carved from sea foam. Each photo is more mesmerizing than the last. A beach at golden hour, a rock framed by turquoise surf. Her smile so carefully lit you can't tell if it is natural or built pixel by pixel. You know, deep down, she's probably just a girl with clever software and time on her hands, yet you don't close the app. You stay. Nights after shifts at sea, you come back to her. The smell of diesel and salt still clings to your uniform, but the glow of your screen feels cleaner, softer, almost sacred. You imagine her tail trailing through dark water, imagine her laughing beneath waves, imagine her waiting. It becomes a ritual. Wipe down your hands, climb into your bunk, pull up her feet. The ship rocks gently and you rock with it, lulled deeper into a rhythm where she seems less like a stranger and more like an anchor. You think of the way real water feels on your skin, cold and pressing, sometimes cruel. Yet she makes you believe there might be another version, a warmer tide where loneliness dissolves. You catch yourself smiling at nothing in particular, only the idea of her. It's embarrassing, but it's also soothing, and in the half-light of the cabin, no one sees. One evening, anchored near a quiet coast, you stare longer than usual. The photo she's posted is ridiculous, tail glittering pink, pearl crown crooked on her hair, but instead of laughing, you feel your chest tighten. The illusion doesn't break. Instead, you feel called deeper. That is the part you don't say aloud, how easily your heart skips toward fantasy when reality feels heavy. You still wonder if it was love or comfort. The sailors around you tease one another with cheap jokes, pass bottles, and share stories that fud with loud laughter. You pretend to listen, but your thumb lingers on the screen, tracing her fin like it's a map. You imagine her voice. Would it be husky like the sea wind, or clear as a bell on deck at dawn? You imagine her gestures. Would she tuck her hair when nervous? Would she look away when smiling? These details, tiny and ordinary, begin to matter more than the shimmer of her stage perfection. Sleep comes slowly on nights like these. You rest with the creak of the ship around you, the faint hum of engines, and the weight of her face in your mind. Sometimes you wonder how ridiculous it is. A grown sailor captivated by something so obviously crafted, yet that doesn't stop you. It almost makes it sweeter, like you're in on the secret, playing along with her spell. You carry her image with you onto deck, into storms, even into the hush of early mornings when the horizon blurs with mist. And when the sea feels too large, when your body aches from work, when silence creeps into the gaps between duty and sleep, you return to her. Narina, the mermaid who might not exist at all, yet somehow feels closer than anyone who stood beside you. The tide of messages begins quietly, almost shyly, as though the two of you are stepping into the shallows rather than diving deep. You send her a wave emoji, simple and unthreatening, and she replies with a seashell. It feels silly, but you grin anyway. Soon, the exchange becomes a rhythm. Photos captioned with little jokes, lines of text that stretch longer each night, until words seem to float between you like bottles tossed into the sea, each one carrying something fragile inside. She calls you sailor boy, half teasing, and you call her sea queen, which makes her laugh and mutters strings of ha-has that somehow feel like the music you've been waiting to hear. In quiet moments, after a long day of rigging ropes and scrubbing decks, you scroll back through those exchanges, savoring the easy flow of it. You notice the way she uses too many exclamation marks when she's excited, or how she always sends a starfish emoji when she says goodnight. These small details take root in you, like barnacles on a hull, ordinary to anyone else, but precious to you. One evening she tells you she's always loved the sea, but fears it too. It's too big, too deep, she writes, and you imagine her typing with furrowed brows, maybe chewing her lip. You answer honestly, "It scares me too, but it also keeps me alive." The admission surprises you, but she doesn't leave it hanging. She replies, "That's why I like talking to you." You don't pretend. Her words ripple through you long after your phone goes dark. You replay them in your head the next morning as gulls scream overhead and ropes slap against the mast. You think about honesty and how much of her you actually know. Is she honest when she says she fears the sea, or is that another carefully painted wave on her backdrop? Still, something inside you leans toward believing her, and that trust is a current too strong to resist. The messages swell into a tide of tenderness. She sends you photos that aren't edited, just glimpses of her desk cluttered with seashells, or a teacup with a chip on the rim, or her hand sketching little fish in the margins of a notebook. These are the moments that disarm you more than glittering tales ever could. You find yourself smiling at the chipped cup more than at the flawless mermaid edits. Maybe it's because flaws are familiar, like the rust on your ship that no paint can fully cover. One night, as rain drums on the deck and thunder rolls, you confess something, that you sometimes feel more alone in a crowd of sailors than you do when speaking with her. The admission hangs heavy, but she doesn't mock it. Instead, she tells you she feels the same, even when surrounded by people. "Maybe we're both searching for someone who sees us," she writes. That line lingers, tender and raw, and you know she's hooked something deeper in you than any image could. There are lighter notes, too. You joke about how she probably couldn't survive a day on deck, with ropes blistering her hands and the constant sway of the sea beneath her. She replies that you probably couldn't survive under the waves, where she says she can hold her breath longer than anyone. You picture her laughing, tapping the screen with playful exaggeration. The banter softens your nights, makes them feel less like endless watch rotations and more like shared stories. Still, beneath the laughter, curiosity grows. You wonder what her voice sounds like, how her laughter feels in the air rather than on a glowing screen. You imagine calling her, then hesitate. What if the sound doesn't match the picture? What if the spell breaks? And yet, isn't that what you want too? To know if what you're building is a dream or a truth? There's a night when she doesn't reply for hours, and you catch yourself pacing the narrow corridor of the ship, restless, checking your phone as though you could will her answer into existence. When the message finally comes, just before dawn, it's a simple, "Sorry, I fell asleep." You feel silly for the tension that built inside you, but also strangely reassured. She's not always at the ready, not always perfect, and that makes her real in a way that glittering scales never could. You catch yourself whispering her name once, out on deck, when the stars spill silver across the sky. Narina. The word tastes as soft, like foam dissolving on your tongue. You know, it might not even be her real name, yet you let it settle in your chest as though it belongs there. The night air feels gentler when you say it aloud. And so the messages keep flowing, playful, honest, sometimes even quiet. Just a photo of the sea she sees, which looks nothing like the vast horizon you sail, but still carries the same ache of longing. You tell her about storms, about sunsets, about how the sea can look green one moment and gray the next. She tells you about her chipped cup, about how she sings in the shower but never in front of people, about how she once spent an hour watching a crab scuttle across the sand. These details shouldn't matter, but they do. They are the fragile threads that weave connection. You don't know if it's love or if it's just comfort, but you keep holding the thread. And with each message, you feel more certain that you're moving toward a moment where imagination and reality will meet, no matter how imperfectly. The day finally comes when you can no longer live in words alone. You're docked at a quiet harbor, the ship's horn still echoing faintly against the cliffs, and your heart is pounding like it's racing the tide. After weeks, months of messages, you've agreed to meet Narina. You stand on the pier, phone in your hand, refreshing the last message. "I'll be there." You'll see me. The words sit heavy with promise, and for the first time, you wonder if you're ready to face what they mean. You scan the shoreline, expecting, foolishly, the shimmer of scales, the kind of entrance her photos suggest, a mermaid rising out of foam. But instead, a woman steps awkwardly from behind a dune. She waves, a little hesitant, and your chest tightens. She looks nothing like the photos. Her hair is shorter, darker, frizzing in the sea breeze. Her dress is practical, not flowing or magical, and her body doesn't gleam with the impossible curves you'd memorized online. No crown, no tail, just her. For a moment, your breath stumbles. The fantasy fractures like a shell underfoot. You had built her into something oceanic, ethereal, a creature caught between tide and dream. What you see now is a woman, ordinary, imperfect, undeniably real. She bites her lip, clearly nervous, and you notice the way she clutches a tote bag decorated with seashell patches, as though carrying a piece of her online self into the meeting. "Hi," she says, and her voice is soft, human, warmer than any caption or emoji. You realize you've been holding your breath, and when you let it out, it comes shaky. "Hi," you echo, the word small but true. You walk toward her, each step heavy with the clash between expectation and reality. You don't know whether to laugh, apologize, or turn away. But then she smiles, not the carefully curated grin from her photos, but a lopsided, nervous smile that tugs at something deep inside you. The first few minutes are awkward, filled with shallow questions and fumbling answers. You ask about her trip. She asks about your ship. The silence between you feels louder than the gulls crying overhead. Yet, when she brushes her hair back, you notice her fingers tremble, and in that detail, you see a mirror of your own uncertainty. It softens you. As you walk together along the pier, she admits, "I know I don't look like the pictures. I'm sorry if that disappoints you." Her words are blunt, and you feel them like a stone tossed into still water. You could deny it, but that would be dishonest. You could leave, but something holds you. So instead you say, "I don't know what I expected, but I wanted to meet you anyway." She laughs lightly, relieved, and the sound surprises you. It's not siren song perfect, it's a little snorty even, but it makes you grin despite yourself. It feels alive in a way the polished fantasy never did. You notice small things. The way she stops to watch a stray cat weaving between lobster traps, the way she picks up a pebble and rolls it. Between her fingers, the way her eyes light up when she points to the tide pools forming along the rocks. These details don't match the dream, but they root her in reality, and strangely, you find that grounding. As you sit together on a weathered bench, you remember the chipped cup she once showed you. She mentions it again, laughing about how she still hasn't thrown it out. It's silly, right? But I like it. It's mine. The confession feels familiar, and you realize you're seeing her the way you saw that cup, flawed but cherished. There's a part of you that still aches for the illusion, the luminous Narina who shimmered online. Yet there's another part quieter but sturdier that feels drawn to the way this. Narina tucks her hands into her sleeves when it's cold, or how she squints into the sunlight, or how she listens closely when you talk. You don't know if this is love, not yet, but you feel the beginning of something more honest. The walk back to the harbor is easier than the walk out. The silence no longer feels like a wall, but like space you can share. You wonder what the sailors on your ship would say if they saw you like this, with a woman who isn't the mermaid you bragged about in your head, but you realize it doesn't matter. They weren't the ones who stayed awake with her messages at midnight. They weren't the ones who carried her name like a secret in the dark. As the sun begins to dip, painting the water gold, she turns to you. "So, do you still want to see me again?" The question is fragile, balancing between hope and fear. You look at her, really look, and though she isn't the Narina you imagined, she's here. She's real, and you know, deep down, you do want to see her again. You don't rush to define anything. Instead, you let the days stretch, each one a test of whether reality can hold the weight of what fantasy once promised. You meet her again the next morning, this time without the heavy pressure of a first impression. She wears jeans and a hoodie, hair pulled back loosely, and you notice she doesn't apologize for how she looks. That quiet confidence, or maybe just her comfort in being herself, draws you in more than any filter ever could. You walk together along the shore. The sand clings to your boots while she tucks hers off and lets her toes sink into the wet edges. She wiggles them dramatically, laughing about how sailors probably never do that. You shake your head, amused, and admit that most of your crew wouldn't even think about it. They're too busy complaining about work or aching for the next port. The moment feels light, like two children skipping stones, and you're grateful for it. Later, sitting on a driftwood log, she admits she worried you wouldn't come back. "I thought you'd see me and walk away," she says, eyes fixed on the horizon. You tell her you considered it, which makes her glance at you sharply. But before the sting can sink, you add, "I stayed because you were still you." The person I laughed with, the one who sent me photos of crabs and chipped mugs. That's who I wanted to meet. Her shoulders relax, and for a second, her eyes soften in a way that makes the whole shoreline seem quieter. The rhythm between you shifts. Instead of pixel-perfect poses, you find joy in quirks. She hums tunelessly when she's thinking. She taps her tote bag twice before setting it down, as though sealing something safe inside. She's quick to laugh at herself, quicker still to point out beauty in small things. Sea glass glinting in the sand, the curl of foam that looks like lace, the way clouds form shapes no one else notices. At first, you worry about what others might think. When you return to the ship, the sailors ask where you've been. You shrug, keep it vague. They expect tales of wild nights, of women that fit their crude jokes, not the quiet companionship of someone who carries seashell patches on her bag. Yet when you step back onto the pier to see her again, you realize their opinions matter less with each tide. You're not building a story for them, you're living one for yourself. There are moments of hesitation, of course. Once, when she laughs too loudly in a cafe, you feel a flicker of embarrassment, a shadow of comparison to the graceful mermaid you once believed her to be. But then she snorts, covers her face, and apologizes through giggles, and you find yourself laughing with her until you forget why you ever cared. It's in those moments, imperfect, unpolished, that your heart steadies. One evening, she invites you to her apartment overlooking the docks. It's cluttered, mismatched, cozy. Seashells line the windowsill, books stack in uneven towers, and the chipped mug sits proudly on the counter, holding a bouquet of half-wilted daisies. She brews you tea, tapping the mug against the table absent-mindedly, and you find yourself memorizing the gesture. It's ordinary, but it feels like a secret only you're being allowed to see. You sit together by the window, watching the tide creep in. The silence is comfortable this time, no longer heavy. You let yourself notice how her hand rests close to yours, not touching, just waiting. You think about reaching for it, then hesitate, caught between fear and hope. Finally, you do, and she doesn't pull away. Instead, she turns her palm upward, fingers curling into yours as though the gesture was always meant to happen. It isn't fireworks. It isn't the crash of waves against the bow. It's quieter, steadier, like the tide smoothing rough stones into something soft. You realize you don't need her to be the mermaid from your screen. You only need her to be this present, real, imperfect, and willing to meet you halfway. Later that night, back on the ship, you lie awake replaying the sound of her laughter, the warmth of her hand. You know you could still walk away. The fantasy is gone, the spell is broken. But in its place, something sturdier is growing. You can feel it like a rope tying you to shore, not a chain, but a choice. You still wonder if this is love, or simply the relief of connection after too much time adrift. But when you close your eyes, you don't see the photoshopped scales or the pearl crown anymore. You see her chipped mug, her uneven stacks of books, her snort of laughter. And somehow that feels more magical than any fantasy you'd imagined. The weeks roll into one another, and what began as a strange curiosity steadies into something resembling home. You find yourself planning your shore leave not around taverns or long, lazy mornings, but around her. Narina meets you by the docks with that same uneven smile, and you find it remarkable how familiar it feels now. What once startled you, her messy hair, her ordinary clothes, her lack of mermaid shimmer, has become the very thing that grounds you. You walk together through small markets, her tote bag bumping against her hip as she stops to admire trinkets that most people overlook. She points out a seashell necklace, and though it's nothing fancy, you buy it for her. She laughs, says it's silly, but wears it anyway. That necklace becomes the kind of detail you carry with you on the ship, something you picture on her when the sea stretches lonely and endless. There's a day when you take her out onto your ship. She's nervous at first, clutching the railing tightly, knuckles pale, but her eyes shine with excitement. She asks endless questions about knots, about sails, about the way the horizon seems to breathe. The crew teases you lightly, but even they soften when they see her curiosity. One even hands her a rope to try. She fumbles it, laughs so hard she nearly cries, and the sound echoes off the waves. It's a memory you tuck away carefully, the kind that feels like it will last. At night in her apartment overlooking the docks, you share simpler things. Tea in that same chipped mug. Long silences broken by her humming, her head leaning against your shoulder as the tide murmurs below. There's no grand drama, no sweeping declarations, only the steady rhythm of presence. You realize that love doesn't always arrive with fanfare. It often slips in quietly, like the tide, until you're surrounded by it without even noticing. One evening, as rain patters gently on the window, she looks at you with a hesitant smile. Do you ever miss the version of me you thought I was? The question lingers, heavy yet tender. You think about it honestly. The answer isn't simple, but you give it anyway. Sometimes I remember the pictures, but then I think of you here, real and beside me, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Her eyes shimmer, not with filters or edits, but with something warmer. You catch yourself cataloging the little quirks you've grown to cherish, the way she taps her tote bag before setting it down, the way she wrinkles her nose when she tastes something too sweet, the way her laughter starts as a quiet chuckle and grows until it overtakes her. These are the details you didn't know you needed. They're not perfect, but they're alive. You know this path isn't a fairy tale. There will be storms, misunderstandings, moments when distance gnaws at you again. But you also know that what you're building isn't fragile like fantasy. It's imperfect, resilient, stitched together with small, real choices. You choose her. And every time she looks back at you, in her unpolished, human way, she chooses you too. You still wonder if this is love or comfort, or if maybe the two are the same thing. But as you sit with her by the window, watching the tide carry moonlight across the water, you realize the question doesn't matter as much anymore. What matters is that she's here, and so are you. And now, as the story settles, let your breathing match the quiet rhythm of the tide. Imagine yourself sitting once more at that window, the rain tapping lightly against the glass, the harbor below calm and steady. The sea no longer feels endless, it feels like a blanket wrapping you close. Narina sits beside you, her presence simple and reassuring, no longer bound by filters or imagined perfection. You notice the way her chipped mug rests on the sill, a little cracked, a little worn, yet holding warmth all the same. That mug is her, and perhaps it's also you, imperfect, yes, but enough. You let your gaze drift to the necklace you bought her, seashells catching the faintest glimmer of light, and it reminds you how small gestures can carry entire worlds inside them. The room is quiet, filled only with the gentle hum of the sea outside and the steady hush of your own breath. Your body softens into the moment, every muscle unwinding. The story no longer needs to move forward. It has already arrived, quietly and completely, in this stillness. So you let go of the weight of expectation, the polished illusions, and even the restless need to define love. You allow yourself to rest in the presence of what is. Two people sitting close, watching the tide. That is enough. Let the images fade slowly now. The rain quiets, the waves smooth into silk, and the glow of the harbor dims into starlight. Breathe in once more deeply and release it gently. The story is finished, but the calm remains. Carry it with you as you drift into rest.